of the many honors that come with the presidency of the OPC is the privilege of bestowing the President's Award. Tonight, we honor photojournalist Maggie Steber. Maggie is a documentary photographer. Maggie is a documentary photographer, photo educator, and mentor to the next generation of photographers. She has traveled the world capturing people and their stories across 68 countries. Her pictures have won countless awards, including the World Press Photo Award for Spot News and the 1988 Olivier Rebeau Award from the OPC. While thinking about how to introduce Maggie to all of you today, I thought the best to use the words she wrote to me after I emailed her with the idea of giving her the President's Award. What Maggie wrote is, quote, "It's funny you should write to me today because I'm in the midst of nominating 3 people for the Masterclass at World Press. In addition, I am mentoring about 5 people who are applying for grants and competitions because it gives me great joy to do so. And they need it. They need people to listen and care about what they do and what they hope to achieve. I'm really a picture editor at heart, and I love seeing what everyone is doing. And by some miracle, I am still working, and this is never lost on me at a time when so many people are struggling." To me, this encapsulates the thoughtful person and photographer that Maggie is, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Maggie Steber this evening. So, the award is a citation, so I'm going to read what it says before I give it over to Maggie. "In recognition of her unflagging commitment to the highest ideals of journalism and visual storytelling, for her staunch support and mentoring of the next generation of photographers, for her bravery and fortitude in telling the most difficult stories with empathy and compassion for the subjects, we present the President's Award of the Overseas Press Club of America to Maggie Steber."
I didn't know I was going to be the appetizer here tonight, but, but it's pretty sweet. So I'm just going to very quickly show you a few pictures from a story I've worked on for 3 years for National Geographic, a magazine on face transplants. And then I'm just going to say a few more things. So this is Katie Stubblefield, and she was 18. At 18, she tried to commit suicide with a rifle and shot most of her face off. And so for the last 3 years, I've been photographing her for National Geographic. I and the wonderful Lynn Johnson, who's an amazing photographer. Every time I would go to see Katie, so she blew most of this face off, and the doctors made a little piecemeal face from her stomach and her thigh. And she called it her Shrek face, but I grew to really love it. And so every time I would go to visit her and photograph her, I was always doing portraits of her and trying to make something beautiful for her because she was a beautiful person, even though what she did changed everybody's life and her family, and her parents who were teachers had to quit teaching. And so I was always trying to make something beautiful out of something that might not be considered beautiful, and this was the cover of the magazine. And another time when I was trying to set up some lights to do another portrait of her during another visit, she and her father just spontaneously started dancing and singing to each other. And this was a really lovely moment because every time I went, it was just day after day of process of going to therapists and speech therapists and physical therapists and even psychological therapy. She was at the Cleveland Clinic, who had a huge grant from the Department of Defense to try to move this science of face transplants forward because so many military people were coming back from the war in Afghanistan and Iraq with terrible disfigurements, and so they were very concerned about that. And the thing that was great about Katie is that she was the same age as a lot of these younger people who were coming back. And so they just started dancing and singing to each other, and I was so grateful for that moment, not only for myself as a picture, but also for them, because they were doing something that they hadn't done before. But the first time I met Katie, she was in the hospital. She had been there for a month to have this device set in her face to bring her eyes closer together, and it was literally a turning of the screws every day to bring her eyes closer together. And finally she got out, and that day we went to a beautiful park and sat there for a long time. And Katie never really got to be alone very much because she was always around doctors and her parents and nurses, and she had so many surgeries. But it was nice to see her have this moment, and her parents just relaxing and kind of napping in the sunlight on a spring day. There is not a day that goes by that Katie isn't suffering, and some days were terrible suffering. And even now, that she has a new face, by the way, she still suffers a great deal, but not so much as before. And just trying to capture those moments of suffering was also quite challenging. I also photographed her doctors. She had a whole team of surgeons, 25 surgeons, and of course my favorite place to go was the cadaver lab because I'm really very dark. And my mother was a scientist, and so I love this science aspect of this very human story. But so they would get, okay, I know we're eating, but you just started, so just drink something. But so the doctors would go to the cadaver lab and they would switch faces on the cadavers, and this was fascinating to me anyway. I mean, I've covered war, and I've worked in Haiti for 30 years, so I've seen a lot of blood and guts, but it doesn't really bother me so much. I don't know. But anyway, it was fascinating. And I really liked to photograph all aspects of this story, so the doctors were, of course, terribly important. And so finally, Katie, after many surgeries and 3 or 4 years of waiting and having to go through a lot of psychological therapy to ensure that she would never try this act again, got a new face from a young woman who overdosed on drugs. And it's really not easy to qualify for a face, but as well has to be the same sex, same gender, the same race, close to the same age, same blood type, no disease at all, no damage to the face. So anyway, this grandmother, who was the guardian of her granddaughter who overdosed, decided to donate this young woman's face to Katie, and Katie got a new face. And they finally met. And this was one of the most extraordinary moments I've ever had the privilege of photographing in my, I'm not going to tell you how many years I've been doing this. You just have to guess. But anyway, this was a lovely moment, and you know, it's so extraordinary to get to be in people's lives when these things happen. It's magical, and I don't really have words for it. All you wordsmiths would have words, but anyway. And oops. Sorry. Oh, David, that was a sneak preview. Anyway, and so finally, it was time to end the story. And for the 3 or 4 years I was photographing, I kept thinking of her parents as warriors, and that they learned everything about every medication, about every surgical therapy. They just learned everything. They were absolute warriors. My mother was half Cherokee. We're not tribal members, but she always taught me about how the ancestors were the eagles flying over us to protect us. And I always thought of that idea for 3 years in terms of trying to make a picture of these parents who were the warriors and the eagles for their daughter. And on the last day I was photographing them, I talked to them about this idea, and they liked it, and so they just laid down on the bed, and I stood over them, and we did this picture. And I think it really expresses what grand people they were to give up everything for this child. So this week has been an embarrassment of riches for me in a way, because I not only have this really lovely honor Pancho, wherever you are, there you are. Thank you so much. It's just a lovely thing that you've given me, a great honor. And I also was a finalist. Lynn Johnson and I were finalists for the Pulitzer. And very nice. But I'm so proud of Lorenzo Tagnoli from the Washington Post that he won for Yemen. And I think that's just the right thing. So I'm just going to say a few more things so you can eat. But Pancho asked me maybe to talk about how one stayed in this business for such a long time, and especially now when there's so many beautiful young people coming into it, and, you know, how is it that I'm still standing? I think photography is a limitless thing, and it's only we who limit it. And I think with a younger generation, it's being liberated a lot to tell stories in a whole new different way, and I actually think this is extremely important. We cannot keep telling stories with the same kinds of pictures because people think that they've seen them and then they don't get to do their jobs. But the most wonderful thing that's happened to me in my career is that at this point in my life and in my career, I feel very deeply that all my pictures belong to the people in them. They don't belong to me. These images are their images. And so for me, that belongs to them. And I am but the guardian and sometimes the warrior when I have to be for these photographs. And to be honest, it's really liberated me in a way that makes me feel very light and very happy, because it's sort of like our children, not that I have any, but I think what we write and what we photograph are like our children, and we send them out in the world to do a job, and we try to teach them and infuse them with every most wonderful, important thing that we can so that they can do their jobs and in the right way and change people's minds and influence them and teach them and maybe sway them to think about something differently. So I'm very happy that I can release these photographs and that maybe they'll change somebody's mind or save another young person from trying to take their own life. And so it's very, I can't really explain it. It's almost like a spiritual experience for me to let go of things. I just want to say one more thing, and then I'll let you eat. But I want to do a shout out for Marty Barron of the Washington Post. I've been a picture editor, a contract photographer for Newsweek. I mentor a lot of young people and even older people. I teach workshops. I've been, let's see, something else. But anyway, so I was the director of photography for a few years. I've been so many things at the Miami Herald. And Marty came to work at the Miami Herald before he went to the Boston Globe and then the Post. And when I was working for the Miami Herald, it was the toughest newsroom. I mean, I hadn't really worked in a newsroom, but it was tough. People were very unhappy. And the paper, they were unhappy. So the paper was kind of like this. I used to do a lot of acting too, so sort of like this. And when Marty came in, suddenly it was like this. And he left before I did, because I only stayed for 4 years because I'm a wild horse and I need to run across the open plain. But Marty, I love this guy. I will always love him so much. And I just am so happy I could embarrass you maybe a little bit. But anyway, I want to congratulate everybody in this room for all of the wonderful things that you've done and produced. And it's really amazing. I know so many of the photographers who've won awards, and I'm so proud that we're all longtime friends. And anyway, congratulations to everybody, and thanks to you for what we all do. And thanks, Pancho, for this wonderful award.
I'll bring you the award, it's okay. Thank you, Maggie.